So welcome everybody to our Expert Intelligence webinar series. So today's session is focused on from AI adoption to AI protection. And together with our partners from Kaseya, we are going to explore how organizations are preparing their environments for AI while also maintaining the security, governance, and compliance needed in these highly regulated industries. So before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping items. So we will have everyone muted throughout the webinar other than our panelists. With that being said, we still would love to hear any and all questions or comments you guys have. So please feel free to use the chat throughout the session, and we will either answer as we can throughout the presentation or answer anything that we didn't get to at the end when we open it up for Q&A. We'll also be recording today's session. So after the webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording, so you can revisit the content at your convenience, or you can share it with colleagues who maybe weren't able to join us live today. And with that, I will turn it over to our panelists for some brief introductions and to get us started.
Steve, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, Nelson. So I'll start by, I guess, introducing myself and the rest of the panelists. First, thank you all for joining. We look forward to taking you on this journey today and share our experiences around what we're seeing relative to AI. I think we got a great panel because it exists at lots of different altitudes relative to, for example, my perspective at executive level, the vendor perspective, the feet on the street perspective. So I'm really excited to share this with you. So I am Steve Lisewski, Global Chief Solutions Officer here at Abacus. I lead our product solutions and advisory teams, and I work across both our healthcare and financial services business units. My current focus is actually building and launching the Abacus Enterprise AI practice. And my goal here is really to help our clients move beyond, the AI pilots to get the outcomes that they look for in leveraging AI in their business. I've been in the MSP space for over 25 years. I've done a lot of enterprise transformation, involved with executive strategy, mergers, acquisitions, and now most recently AI adoption in regulated industries. My lens today is really going to be on from the executive lens, right? Organizational readiness, governance, operating models, change management, and scaling AI across the organization, right? So from my perspective, today is less about the technology itself and more about what it takes organizations to turn AI into those measurable business outcomes. So with that, I am just going to hand it off to Nelson, back to you. Since you're the moderator, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sir. Sure. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the from the AI adoption to AI protection webinar. I'm Nelson Gomes. I'm the Executive Vice President of Corporate Growth and Partnerships here at Abacus. Similar to Steve, I've been in the industry for close to 30 years now, taking a different role throughout the years, and really excited about today's webinar. So I'll be your moderator today, and over the next hour, a panel from Abacus and Kaseya will walk you through how to turn AI into real measurable impact and why the right governance unlocks growth rather than slowing it down. But before we begin, I want to continue to introduce the rest of the panel. So I'll hand it over to Patrick. Patrick.
Hey, thanks, Nelson. Patrick Sullivan, Principal Solutions Specialist here with Kaseya. I've been in the MSP space since about 2012. I'm based out of New Hampshire, and my expertise and focus is on cloud detection and response. So all of those applications that are living outside of your infrastructure, my company specializes in really bringing all that telemetry together and giving auto responses and helping really push some of that AI adoption. I'm really excited about today's webinar.
Emery, how about yourself? Introduce yourself.
Awesome. I am from the Kaseya team as well. I'm a solutions specialist here. I was primarily working with a company in the email space for about 5 or 6 years. Started there in 2020. Been working with the MSP space as well, similar to Pat. So more on the cybersecurity side, but very similar.
Perfect. Thank you. And Tony, you're up next.
Sounds good. My name's Tony Greco. I'm the Abacus medical side here. I'm a technical account manager. I've been in the MSP space for about over 20 years. I owned an MSP company for over 15 years. I spent a lot of my time dealing with AI, and I'm very passionate about it, and I'm looking forward to the webinar.
Great. And then our final panelist, Mick.
Good to meet everybody. My name is Mick Grayson. I'm the Director of Governance, Risk, and Compliance here at Abacus, where mainly serve as the overseer for the governance, risk, and compliance services that we deliver to clients, and mainly in this, for the sake of this panel here, delivering on AI governance guidance and helping organizations meet their regulatory and compliance needs while also developing a more mature process for owning and adopting an AI adoption strategy from the top down.
Perfect. Thank you. So let's kick things off in a fashion that we always like to with a poll. So Emily, can you please launch the poll where we have a couple of questions, and then we'll have some of the panelists go over some of those results. So if you can please go ahead and select which one applies to you. And we'll give that about 30, 40 seconds.
Oh man, bummer, Nelson. Panelists can't
Yeah,
vote.
there we go.
We're denied
Come
a.
on. I know where I would vote, but I'll keep that anonymous. Okay, so we have about 10 seconds left. Should I do a countdown?
Will an apple fall when you're done?
Yes. Okay. Emily, can you share those results with the team and with the panel? Great. So, Steve, love for you to walk us through these results and provide some insight. Anything surprising that you want to share?
No, I think if I was a betting man, I probably would have won some money on this poll, right? I think this is exactly kind of what we're seeing in the market, that companies are really in different spots along the journey, right? Some are quick out of the gate, some are hesitant out of the gate, some are, it's all over the place. So seeing a relatively even split makes sense. And then, of course, on the governing, I think because we're in regulated industries, it's always funny, not funny, but you see a lot of hesitancy around governance, right? There's just, I think people get worn out of the regulations and the policies, and so the governing always tends to lag. So for me, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no surprise. I mean, it's surprising to see that the governance is so low, but we're not surprised to see it because obviously, like you said, Steve, it's something that, unfortunately is not always taken very seriously. Okay. So, anybody else on the panel wanted to provide any insight before we go to the next one?
I will say from the DRC perspective, also not really surprised here because with many of the clients that I work with, they are just now developing very basic policies behind it. And those policies are kind of your first step. And there's a whole different thought process and a whole different sort of way to grow with AI governance. So totally not surprised that that is the lowest area of implementation and adoption here.
Excellent. All right, so let's go on to the next slide where where the focus is, why are organizations turning to AI? And I think members on this panel have probably heard it from, well, everybody else is doing it, so should we, to more specific and more focused areas of why they're adopting. And I'd love to get the insight from our partners at Kaseya, Patrick and Emery, to talk a little bit about this and provide us with some insight. So Patrick, Emery, can you guys take this one, please?
Yeah, there were a few things that stuck out to me. First, on the productivity side, I mean, there's so many aspects you can go to this, whether it just be simply coming through your email inbox, summarizing what you should start with on a daily basis, or analyzing calls that you've been on, stuff like that, or even on the back end of having tools that are filtering email with AI, stuff like that to help your employees be more productive in what they're going through as well. And on the customer experience side, just really utilizing it to not only scan those messages or help set up specific settings, but help answer tickets faster, stuff like that. There's so many ways it can help in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think for me, the reducing operational costs really speaks volumes. And I think a lot of folks get into trouble thinking about, AI as replacing their jobs. And you hear that a lot, especially in the media, and that really gets overinflamed because in the reality of it, it's going to make your life easier and it's going to take away a lot of the digging and the hunting and pecking you need to do to go find a lot of those answers. So, understanding that AI, when it's used correctly, can really help accelerate your day to day and really reduce the time it spends, again, hunting and pecking around. And then, of course, that fourth bullet point, boy, I mean, if anyone out there has used ChatGPT or any of those other AI systems, it really helps accelerate that decision making process. So, in your personal life, if you're going on vacation, you can now go into ChatGPT and ask it, where's the best place near the beach? That's a Marriott, but that's also close to downtown, right? You can have it narrow down that search, which would normally take you an hour or two over a cup of coffee in the morning to try to figure that out. Now you can really have that accelerate. So, take what you get from your own personal journey with ChatGPT and the like, and then bring that into the business sense and start playing around if you haven't already with querying and asking it the right questions. Because boy, it can really help you make those split-second decisions when sometimes it might take you, hours to get there without it.
Great insight. Thank you, Patrick. Let me pose this question real quick. Get insight from some of the panelists here. So, what's changed over the past 12 months that's making AI in a boardroom more of a conversation rather than just an IT initiative? Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good one because what we're seeing is kind of an echo chamber. I'll call it an echo chamber. We see it in the PE org groups, we see it in the board groups, and I think it's the overwhelming flow of AI that's hitting the market, right? Like it's you can't go anywhere without hearing somebody talking about AI, right? And so I think as business leaders, it's put a lot of pressure on us because we think we're behind, right? Because everybody's saying, "Oh, AI, 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 you got to be doing it. What are you doing? What are your initiatives? How are you taking advantage of it? How are you thinking about it? What are you doing?" I mean, there's constant pressure to implement, and I think that's where one that's where the pressure's coming from, and I think that's probably the wrong reason to turn to AI, right? I think for me, AI is just another business problem, right? Or not problem, but opportunity for us to leverage AI as part of our tool chest of things that we can reach in as a mechanic and grab and help our businesses grow. I think people are turning to AI because it's available. They're turning to AI because they're getting a lot of pressure from PE, from boards, from their neighbors to execute on AI.
Yeah. Tony, I know that you focus with some clients. I mean, what are you hearing?
I mean, it's the same as Steve mentioned. It's a rapid race to get to this finish line of we need to adopt this or we're behind the curve or I mean the models are changing daily. So I don't think we'll ever be ahead of that curve, but at least we can get to the point where we can, put this into a guardrail situation where it's safe for, to roll out into the environment.
Excellent. All right, so let's go on to the next slide here. And wow, this is an area that I think that requires some focus from the panel. And Tony, I'd love for you to kind of kick things off of where do you see organizations are struggling?
Yeah, for sure. Most of the time, I mean, most companies have not formally rolled out AI quite yet. I know a lot of employees are using AI all over the organization, this is what we call AI sprawl or shadow AI. A lot of this is not regulated. A lot of people are doing it kind of on their own machines. And this is where the risk comes into play because and just to touch on that second bullet there, the disconnected data, a lot of the data that's being pulled into the AI engines are not scrub data. It's not clean data. So we have to make sure that what you're putting in is what you're going to get out, and it's not a hallucination. I would say the biggest risk is not the approved AI, but it's the unapproved AI.
Right.
Without governance, we're losing visibility into sensitive data and AI influencing decisions where obligations are being met. So we just need to make sure that we're not letting the Wild West happen in organizations.
Right. So Mick, what do you see as are some of the obstacles that organizations underestimate when starting their AI journey?
Tony started hitting the nail on the head there in that, we have unauthorized AI that's going on, but that kind of points to the greater issue that a lot of organizations have is who's actually steering the car when it comes to these things, right? That's where that lack of governance comes in. If you don't have that ownership at the top, you don't have these sets of policies, but also enforcement mechanisms behind it, you are open to the Wild West, and that opens you up to potentially exposed data, which leads into your regulatory compliance risk, especially if you are, whether intentionally or not, potentially exposing your sensitive information, personal data, et cetera, into these AI systems where you have very limited control if you even know that it's happening in the first place, right? So that's what a lot of those organizations struggle with. I kind of lump that governance and compliance component together because with the governance, you typically have your compliance initiatives start to be built in. You make sure that that top understands what do we need to be implementing to make sure we have that compliance in place, but also what are we doing internally to make sure we have that compliance there. If we can't answer some of the base questions of what do we have? What are we allowed to do with it? What's going into it? What are we expecting out? You run the risk of totally having everything fall apart and scrambling to try and catch everything up. One thought that I typically have with a lot of this is the lack of governance is not only reflective of AI, it's usually reflective of larger structural issues within an organization, right? So if you already have some of these gaps in place in the first place, then implementing AI on top of that is only going to sort of amplify and speed up the exposure from those risks there.
So if I could add some statistics to this. So according to Microsoft, 78% of employees using AI at work bring their own tools instead of waiting for company approved solutions. 60 to 75% of employees use unsanctioned AI tools for work. According to Cyberhaven, 73% of the workplace AI activity occurs through personal accounts, which are completely bypassing governance controls altogether. And IBM identified shadow AI as a contributing factor to approximately over 20% of the data breaches in 2025. So that just kind of gives you some perspective of the necessity for governance.
Wow, that's surprising, but I'm not surprised either. I think that those are some of the things that that we're seeing and we're hearing from our clients as well. Patrick and Emery, we'd love to get your perspective, and perhaps you can provide some examples, as in regards to what organizations are struggling. And please pick any of these topics. I think it's something that the audience would love to hear. So, Patrick, Emery.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at disconnected data as one of the biggest struggles, not to mention the fact that they don't even know where to start. Sometimes people aren't even at this slide yet. They don't even know where to go and they end up in that pilot purgatory. But disconnected data and having so many different technology vendors and the lack of governance there, right, is another story. But having so many different data lakes, I think it's very hard if you're using fragmented or point solutions versus getting everything bundled together and having one pane of glass to look at everything so all of your solutions can talk to each other, because that helps breed that cross correlation so you understand what's happening in a cloud environment versus what's happening on a hard server. But when it comes to AI specifically, a lot of that disconnected data I think it starts with getting the right committee and getting a champion and understanding, right, who is good with AI within your own organization and starting there and letting them do some of that, due diligence and upfront legwork, I think can really go a long way. And we've seen success with that.
Yeah, and
Jeremy, do you want?
to build onto that, the lack of governance piece has always stuck out to me on this one here. Just the fact that it's so easy, like Tony was going into those stats, to just drop whatever you want into ChatGPT these days, and you don't know where it's going. You don't know who's doing it or when they're doing it. So unless you're tracking that and you're following it and you have precautions in place, it can just get out of hand. Kind of feeds into, knowing exactly who they're emailing, if their account's taken over, if they're logging into it on their personal device and or their company device, stuff like that, and knowing what information's out there.
So, Steve, from an executive perspective, organizations often blame the technology when AI initiatives stall. I mean, in your experience and some of the insight that you have, what's really driving low adoption, and why do so many organizations get stuck in a pilot mode?
Yeah, and this isn't new, Nelson. I mean, this is why my teeth look so good, because I've been around so long. They've been kicked out so many times and replaced. This is a story that's been true for decades, right? And the issue is that technology is rarely the problem, right? AI isn't really a technology initiative. It's a business transformation initiative, right? And so going through, many years of transformation, we typically find that the technology usually works, right? It's technology isn't the issue. It's the people, it's the organizations, right? The organizations fail to adapt that technology, and that's usually because the leadership challenge is really greater than the technology challenge, right? I mean, Nelson, in the healthcare side, we've seen lots of EMR vendors come and go, and we've seen healthcare organizations who were identical on paper in terms of their specialty and the size of practice and their patients and geography, and they both implement the exact same solution, yet one fails miserably and one is amazingly successful, right? So that's not a technology issue, right? That's a leadership issue or leadership challenge, a people challenge, right? And there's three main reasons for that, right? One is no business ownership, right? No executive sponsor, nobody at the top of the organization really setting the tone and driving the initiative through the organization. And we typically see with that no measurable outcomes, right? And we're seeing that in the pilot purgatory now, where it's, hey, let's try AI versus let's solve an actual business problem. And that just, now we just start seeing the dominoes fall down because we don't have that executive sponsor, that executive leadership. We find ourselves not operational ready, right? We don't focus on the governance. We don't focus on having good, clean data, right? Data governance, so that we make sure the data can turn into information that can turn into knowledge and wisdom. So we don't end up leveraging the data the right way. We end up with security problems. We have process issues, right? Just traditional operational, malfunctions. And then the change management side, right? I think change management is probably one of the biggest issues organizations are going to struggle with relative to AI. And again, it's going to come back to people, right? We hear all the time, oh, people are afraid of change, right? What I've seen is that people aren't afraid of change. They're afraid of what they're going to be losing, right? So as a result of this change, what am I losing, right? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to lose my skills? Am I going to lose my worth to the company? What am I losing, right? And if leaders don't identify that, name that, address that, right, create the right narrative in the organization so that we can have successful change management and successful AI adoption, the technology is going to fail, right? So, relative to, we'll call it pilot purgatory, pilots prove that the technology works, but it's really, if we're going to scale our organization, it requires leadership decisions around ownership, governance, funding, and organizational change, right? So until we treat this as a true transformation that's led from the top and putting the right framework and operating system in place, organizations are going to continue to struggle.
Interesting. You talked a little bit about framework, which brings us to our next slide. And I think they're like the core pillars of build to adapt and how organizations should really consider um, how do they go to, how do they adopt? So, Steve, can you walk us through the approach to an AI readiness framework?
Yeah, so this is actually a framework I've been working on relative to Abacus go to market. How are we thinking about AI and how we're going to help our clients adopt it and gain the outcomes that they're going to have. And to get to this, I'll rewind a little bit and just talk about how I got here, right? And I got here, obviously because of AI and the fact that it's here, but AI is really not new, right? I think every generation has seen a technology shift, right? You go back to the mainframe, and I'm not saying that I was here when the mainframe was here, but that was seen
Sure you were.
as a generational technology shift, right? Then we went to the PC, and then Al Gore helped us create the internet. We had the cloud, and when the cloud got here, it was going to solve all our problems, and all our servers were going to move to the cloud, and it was going to be cheaper and faster and easy to manage. And now we have AI, right? And so when I think about these generational technology shifts, I think of them as waterfall moments, right? It's we're cruising along the river of life and business, and things are going okay. We meander left and right, and we go over a stump here or there, have to go around a rock every once in a while. But when we get these waterfall moments, it just kind of creates chaos for most organizations, right? Because most of us find ourselves at the bottom of that waterfall, getting drowned by all the new information, all the new everything just coming down upon us, right? Now, I'm not saying that AI is exactly the same as the mainframe or PC or internet or cloud, right? This is different because of pace, because of the rate of change. But most organizations are treating this as a sprint versus a marathon, right? And I view this as a marathon that we have to run at a sprint pace, right? So we're not going to be able to run this marathon at a 10-minute mile. We're going to have to run it at a 4-minute mile, but we do need to treat it as a marathon and built a framework to work to leverage it, right? So, AI isn't a project. It's really an organizational capability, right? AI is not going away, right? Is AI going to be gone in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years? No way, right? We know that the models are going to change. We've seen the models change already, right? We know the vendors are going to change. We know the tools are going to change. But our capability needs to last, right? We need to embed the capability in our organization to be able to deal with all of these changes, to adapt to them as they're coming at us, so that we can enjoy the opportunity, right? Take advantage of what's in front of us. So when I look at this framework, I think of it as an operating system, right? An evolving operating system that just is a continual loop, right? So, it starts at governance here, but as we saw in the poll, organizations are entering this framework in different places, right? Some people are going right to innovation, right? Some people are going to enablement. Some people are starting at governance. It really doesn't matter where you jump in, but the reality is, because this is an operating system, you will find yourself in all 4 of these spaces throughout the life cycle, right? So if we were going to start in a place, it would be governance, right? It would be, hey, we're in regulated industries. We have to have guardrails. We have to have confidence that the tools we're using are protecting our data, protecting our patients and our clients, and that we can safely innovate because we have the right governance and compliance in place. And then we shift to the enablement, right? So do we have the systems? Do we have the processes? Are our people all set up, right? How are we actually enabling the AI in our organizations? And whether that's leveraging LLMs, whether that's implementing new tools within existing applications that have enabled AI, there's tons and tons of enablement here. And then once we enable it, we have to operate it, right? So once it's in, is it being adopted, right? Are we getting the right outcomes that we expected? Are we seeing increased risk? Are we seeing reduced risk? Are we getting the ROI on the AI investment? And then eventually we're going to get back around to innovation, right? What new ideas, what new technology is available, right? how are we going to prioritize what we do next? And this is all coming from continuous learning and obviously innovation in the industry, in the industry itself, right? So once we innovate, then we have to go back and govern that innovation, right? And then we have to enable that innovation. We have to operate it. So, for me, readiness isn't about preparing for today's AI. It's about building an organization that continually adapts AI as it evolves.
Okay. Mick, I know that governance and compliance is a big component, and I think that's where this all starts. Because before you adopt, I think that those two components are certainly areas of focus. So Mick, can you talk a little bit more about that portion of the framework?
Sure. So as Steve and Nelson, you reiterated here, that's kind of the foundational component because it's a very big and tempting it's a big temptation to go ahead and try and find an AI tool you think is, what's the new sexy one that's out there right now, and then go and try and adopt it before your competitors do and, get going. But without governance really putting the guardrails in, creating the actual direction for things, you just run into creating just almost piles of messes, right? You have, especially as different regulations overlap or directly have some AI components built into their, oversight. That's one of those factors that need to be considered here. Like from this slide, we have security concerns that are delaying projects, right? If we're not considering how does implementing this AI tool impact our security posture, you run that risk of unintentionally violating your other regulatory obligations there, right? And that also goes with your compliance risks right off the gate. You are potentially increasing or introducing new risks for your compliance there if you don't have appropriate oversight, appropriate guardrails, and checks and balances to make sure that your AI adoption is sound and meeting all of the requirements there, right? To expand on what we've been really hitting on with employees creating shadow AI risks, that has numerous implications that go into that with, you don't know what is actually being generated, you don't know what is being input, and you don't know especially what's being output. I cannot tell you how frequently people are copying and pasting things directly from an AI tool, whether it's a sanctioned tool or not,
Right.
and without the governance component behind it saying that this is an authorized tool. If we also don't govern the other checks, such as human in the loop verification and bias checking, things like that, who knows what you're going to wind up outputting there, right? So you probably heard the term hallucination. That happens quite a lot. And one of the counters for hallucination is simply making sure everybody's checking the outputs without just, accepting it at face value. So
Hey, do you think that AI has created its own category of insider risk? It's not that it's malicious, right? But employees feel that they can do more by using these tools. The problem is what we're seeing is there's no guardrails, then they're still going to continue to do it. What are your
it's
thoughts?
it's both an internal and external risk as well, right? So internal risk, yes, you are creating all of these compliance risks as were previously mentioned, right? But with those unsanctioned tools, you're basically shouting out into the world and potentially giving anybody, access to your data, whether you intend to or not, right? The other side, and I think this is something from a cybersecurity perspective that people, may be tracking, may not be tracking. These AI tools are highly publicized, right? That makes them huge targets for malicious actors, whether they are trying to actively break the underlying infrastructure or trying to get into the underlying infrastructure for these third-party tools, or whether they are trying to create other, means of obtaining your data, or if they are already within your environment, say you have a compromised user and they're using one of these AI tools, only a couple of things, might unfortunately expose a lot more than what's intended, right? So, um, I would, what we've been really focusing from my team is we are really cybersecurity minded with all of this, but we're almost treating AI as its own independent thing, just as cybersecurity is its own independent thing from overall IT, right? They're all pretty distinctive domains and have their own requirements and own considerations that need to be put into place.
Yeah. So, a question for the panel. So, 5 years from now, what do you think organizations will regret more? That they were too slow to adopt, or that they were too quick to adopt without governance? And I'm gonna ask Tony. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think you're going to see a lot of companies just jumping in head first and hoping for the best. And I think that's going to become a major issue down the road. Um, I really think that we need to make sure that we crawl before we walk here, and we don't actually put all of our eggs in one basket, all of our data out there for everybody to see, like Mick said. So that's going to be crucial.
Patrick, Emery, you guys want to add to this?
No, I would agree with Tony on that. I think it's the latter for sure. I mean, if you crawl before you walk, then it opens up a lot of opportunities to expand. But if you go too fast, it just complicates everything.
It goes
Yeah,
back
and we're
to it goes back to the comment that Steve said, right? And it kind of stuck with me. It's a marathon, but it seems like it's a very fast-paced marathon, right? And in order for you to, I'm not a runner, but in order you to run a fast-paced marathon, you got to be in pretty good shape. And I kind of compare the being in good shape with the compliance piece of it and the governance side. Um, Anybody else want to add to this one, Steve? I mean, I know this is something that we keep talking to our clients about, we keep hearing, and so anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, again, we can go on forever. It's a different one, and I think the one of the in the chat, I think Stephen asked a question about baking the governance and compliance into our standard MSP offerings, and two things on that. One, AI again is not. Yes, there are new components to it, but there's a lot of solutions that security solutions that overlap AI and other things, right? So there already are things baked in relative to AI in the offering. But part of the issue we see is just the amount of vendors in the space, the amount of new technologies that are coming to market half-baked, so they don't have the normal security controls and compliance controls that we would normally think of. And then in going through the vetting process of some of these tools that promise the ability to, interrogate prompts, produce the compliance and the security that we need, we're finding a lot of them falling short. Um, so there's just a lot, right? It is that waterfall moment. There's just a lot coming at us all at one time, and we need to make sure that the products that we're evaluating and moving forward and having our clients invest in are going to do exactly what they say they're going to do.
So we talk a lot about governance and adoption, but what does success really look like? Emily, if you can, yes, thank you. So, what does a successful AI adoption look like? And Tony, I want to start off with you and perhaps you could share. You work with a number of clients and organizations that are going through this journey. What can you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing we want to do is focus on four dimensions of this. Your people, which is your training, your change management. You want to build AI literacy across the organization. You want to empower the employees with the approved tools, and you want to create AI champions within each department to pass this along. The second part of that is going to be your process. So it's identifying repeatable business workflows, and you're going to start with the highest value, most repeatable use cases possible. You want to integrate AI into existing workflows, measure productivity and business outcomes. For your technology stack, you're going to integrate AI with trusted enterprise data. You want to connect AI with trusted business data, standardize on your AI platforms, which is most important, continuously monitor usage and performance. And then obviously your governance piece of this would be creating your guardrails that enable rather than restrict. We don't want to over restrict, but we also don't over enable, thus providing an open door for all kinds of issues. Define clear policies with acceptable use case, protect sensitive data, and most importantly, ensure compliance while enabling innovation. When all these four areas come together, it becomes part of the organization's operating model as opposed to just another software tool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just about the tool. And I think, you keep hearing, especially for those of us that are in the healthcare business unit, we keep hearing about all these tools that could do all these great things, and it becomes noisy, not only for us that are supporting our clients and guiding them through an evaluation process, but our clients are getting overwhelmed with inquiries on, hey, our tool can do this, and the focus becomes the tool and not really the framework.
Yeah, I think what I've asked the most is, where are you today, and where do you want to prioritize this first?
Yeah.
Because that becomes the most crucial, and obviously we can then target and adopt and put the guardrails in place that we need.
So, with AI, there's a lot of functionality into automation, and
Right.
and Patrick and Emery, I'd love to hear what you guys are doing on the Kaseya side with automation and process workflows, and how that is really being adopted, by Kaseya and by the partners at Kaseya as well. Patrick?
Yeah, so I think it really comes down to the breadth and depth of our solutions, and we are located in over 170 different countries. So the telemetry we get is just phenomenal, and so being able to correlate all of those things with staying within our own guardrails. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours developing and honing our craft, as far as working with partners like yourself and across the world, really, with getting all of that telemetry and getting it flowing all into one central system, so we actually can make heads or tails of it. And I think, piggybacking off of Steve, it's a lot about picking the right vendor and the right partner. And if you are not an expert in AI today and you want to be able to offer it, you absolutely should partner with someone like Abacus, someone that has done the research, that you have as trusted advisors. I mean, look at this panelist of specialists up here that really know what they're talking about. And so if you don't really know where to start, absolutely leverage folks like this to get you along your journey. And Emery, sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
No, you took the words out. I'm all good there.
Nice. Thank you.
Steve, if these four different areas of focus all matter, where should the executive team actually start?
Yeah, I think this start is business outcomes, right? Like it's what are we looking, why are we implementing AI? What are our goals as a business? What are we struggling with? What do we want to be when we grow up? And then how can we leverage the tool, right? And then how do we implement that operating system so that AI just becomes part of our operations, right? It's not a license, it's not co-pilots, it's business. It becomes part of our process for how we implement and get business outcomes, right? So there's, probably four basic, characteristics: making sure that your technology is secure, right? That you've redesigned processes to take advantage of the AI, not just taken existing processes and used AI to do those processes, but how can we truly transform and think about and do things differently? We need to ensure that, if we're going to be successful, it has to be trusted by people. So if we're going to introduce AI to the organization has to understand, have clarity about what we're trying to accomplish and how they fit into that success, so that they can trust the process and buy in and help implement. And then we talked about it ad nauseum, but having strong governance, right? Because we got to make sure that we reduce the risk to the organization and our clients and patients. From an executive starting standpoint, really, it's having a baseline, right? Where are we from a technology perspective? Where are we from a governance perspective? How are our processes? Am I people aligned for this, right? So I think it's that having that honest look in the mirror to figure out where you're starting and where you are. And then if you're going to take off with AI, start with a business outcome, right? Have one executive owner, right? Redo the workflows, measure the value, focus on that single outcome, and then pick the technology that's going to help you achieve that goal, right? So, as you said before, the technology enables the AI, but it's people, process, governance determine whether the AI is actually going to deliver on the business value.
Excellent. Thank you. Um, so I think that in the next slide, um, Emily, if you can go to the next slide, um, is a focus on our AI and risk readiness assessment. Um, and I love for Steve and Tony to talk a little bit about this and why this is important. Um, we always, we talked a lot about, adoption and governance, but before that, we feel that being ready or identifying kind of where you are, and I think Tony, you talked a little bit about this, right? Is
Right.
kind of identifying where are you today, where do you want to be, and how do you get there, right? Um, and obviously we all feel it's imperative to start with a readiness assessment. So Tony and Steve, love to get a little bit more insight about this readiness assessment.
Yeah, I'll kick it off, Nelson. And I think the reality is, you can't build a roadmap until you know your starting point. We talk about this relative to goals and strategies. And, for all you visual people, you know that on a map you have a starting point and you have an ending point, and there's lots of different ways to get from the starting point to the ending point. And our goal is, as leaders, is to make, the most direct route we can to ensure the successful outcome, right? So I think having, going through an AI risk and readiness assessment is really just that look in the mirror. Not to, we will give you a maturity score out of it, but it's not about a maturity score. It's about a look in the mirror so that you truly understand where you're starting from. So that when you have that destination, you set realistic, milestone and goals and get organizational alignment, right? So when you do the readiness assessment, you're getting different perspectives throughout the organization, not just IT, but also compliance and business, right? Looking at what's going on within the organization as a whole, and then this serves as kind of a baseline for shared facts, right? So that you guys can make better investment decisions around AI, right? We are in regulated industries. So, obviously we have to understand where the shadow AI exists. We know it, Tony already told us it's there. We have to understand our current reality around that, right?
Right.
How bad is it? How good is it, right? Are we able to enable this safely? Are we able to govern it? And then, being able as an executive to have a deliverable that says, okay, here's my maturity assessment. Here's where I stand relative to best practices. Here's where my biggest risks are. Here's a couple of prioritized use cases, and here's kind of a 90-day roadmap to get me started with an executive recommendation, right? So again, the goal in the assessment isn't to tell you how mature you are. The goal is to give you, the leadership team a common understanding of where you are today so that you can confidently decide where you're going to go next, right? And with
Yeah.
that, go ahead, Nelson.
No. I was going to say it's a reminder of kind of identifying, where you are, and then, what are those gaps, and how do you bridge those gaps, and then in what timeline, like where do you prioritize them? So this assessment really provides that executive level type of insight on, okay, here's where you are, here's where you need to go, and here's how you get there, type of thing.
Yep. Yep. Clarity, right? The best thing that we can have as leaders and the best thing we can give to our team members is clarity. And this is kind of the first step in providing that clarity. And Tony, I know you've done these assessments with clients. Why don't you kind of walk us through the assessment, what it looks like, and what you find typically surprises leadership teams when the results come back?
Right. So the major surprise I've noticed so far has been that AI adoption has already started and there's no formal strategy in place. So that's kind of the biggest thing that they've seen. I would say 50% of the employees are trying or attempted to use Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude without any sort of governance and security compliance controls. What we like to see in the assessment is that we can look at the strategy, the governance, security, the compliance, the data readiness, business processes that we're evaluating. And the biggest gaps are not usually technical. They're around data risk, data quality, risk management, and organizational readiness. And then that's the major thing is we want to make sure that the people are ready to implement this. This is not something we just want to roll out. We want to have a baseline report so we can build on that and not just, kind of come out the gates with just using an AI tool because it's just that it's a tool. So you want to make sure that your organization's ready and you're ready to move forward. One of a recent assessment has revealed over 50% of the admin team was already using Claude, the non-enterprise, and non-enterprise Copilot, which obviously opens up data security risks. So that was another issue that we came across as well. And what the assessment focuses on is, what is AI and how are we going to use this? What risks do we introduce? Where can AI create measurable value for the company, not just a tool? And what governance is required to scale to adopt this safely? It's basically about risk reduction, governance, and business value. And that's where it comes into play.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight on the assessment. I think it all starts here for sure. We really covered a lot in a short amount of time, and I want to make sure that we still leave, some time for questions. And I know, there are quite a few, so we'll try to get to as many as we can. But before we do that, I really want to go around the horn and just get some insight from the team here on what's one action that every organization, from your perspectives, should take in the next 90 days to move from AI interest to impactful, right? And I want to start with the team from Kaseya to really provide us, with your thoughts. So, Mick or Emery, can you guys kind of kick us off? What would be that one thing?
I mean, I would say internal champion, and we've heard it before, but you always have one or two folks, that guy or that gal that loves AI, that does their own independent research. Utilize them as your champion because you can really learn a lot from someone that's really into it, right? Rather than trying to force someone to understand it, someone that is already naturally drawn to it. And then from there, that's a wash, rinse, repeat, and the other employees will start picking up on the fact that, hey, it's working for Sally. It'll work for me too.
Emery?
Yeah, I mean, to build off that, you can use it in kind of two aspects. One is just expanding a tool with that champion, whether it be, people that don't really know how to use it, but also on the security front, making sure that the IT team is really involved in finding ways that to not only keep it secure, but then also to make their jobs easier at the end of the day, because that's partially what it's there for.
Mick, what about you?
Sure. I think, again, this is kind of an additive process because Patrick with the internal champion and Emery with the connection there. I think a big one would be creating a sort of register or inventory of what's currently in place and making sure when we have it, we know what it is, we know what we're allowed to do with it, and then make some decisions about what we don't have, right? So if we're immediately going to be looking to block everything else except what's approved, or what our strategy is to adopt beyond that, you can look at that with a nice big inventory register that has all of those items at a glance so you can quickly make those decisions.
Okay. Tony, how
I
about
would
you?
say that for me, it would be understanding the risks associated with AI. Making sure that the staff understands that data gets put in, it's not necessarily secure, and they need to be aware of that. So I would say more of the policies need to be put in place. If you haven't started the policies and procedure already, you need to do that. That's a major, a major risk. So.
And Steve, why don't you bring this one home for us and close this one out?
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because I don't know if I could just pick one thing, right? There's as a leader, we know there's always 20 things that we have to do at the same time. But if we're talking about the next 90 days and you're just getting into AI or you have lots of stuff floating around, my advice is treat AI as a business initiative tied to outcomes, not a technology initiative, right? So have one executive owner who understands what those outcomes are, right? Pick one business outcome that you're going to solve for over the next 90 days. Don't try to take on 10 initiatives, right? Take on one or two. and execute as a high level, right? At a high level. Start maturing your organization to get them ready for to continual adaptation to what's coming. Because like I said earlier, it's not going away. It's going to be here for 3, 5, 10 years. So how do we get that adapting motion, that operating system in our organization that we can successfully deploy these new solutions over and over again as things keep changing?
Excellent. Wow. We covered so much. I know we have a couple of minutes here for some questions. Hey, Emily, are there any questions out there that I know I've seen quite a few come through. So if you want to kick us off with some of those questions, and
Yeah.
then we can have the panel just chime in.
Yeah. So, the first question is, what is the biggest risk of adapting AI to a small firm?
I'll start there and let it go. I think the risk isn't doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate against small firms or large firms or medium firms or mega firms. It's the risk is the same to every firm, right? So I think that's one of the things that caught a lot of people early on in the MSS in the cyberspace, right? It's like, oh, I'm too small. Nobody's interested in me. It doesn't matter, right? This is a new world, right? The risks are the same regardless of size. So you need to, unfortunately, whether you're an enterprise or a small business, you need to treat those risks the same. So I think the risk is thinking that you're small, therefore you don't have the same risks.
Yeah. And I will say all of these questions are kind of along the same, um, risk subject matter. The second one is Copilot in Office products safer than the general products like ChatGPT and Claude Code, etc.?
Yeah, I could take that one if you'd like. Um, the answer is yes, and the reason being is because it's within the 365 ecosystem. Once your data is siloed into like its own containerized, I would say, then it becomes less of a risk for you. So, although there are security risks associated with that, it's a lot more, I would say, a lot less risky than using a Claude or a ChatGPT.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Emily, any other questions that we have?
Last one. So is our PII on the finance side and then PHI for healthcare at risk by the very fact that people are using AI tools? Or are people entering, that confidential information into these tools?
Yeah, I think without the proper governance and security tools in place, absolutely, I can cut and paste a PHI or PII into an LLM and have it go out in the world. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for participating in today's webinar. We covered so much. Steve, Patrick, Emery, Tony, and Mick. Wow. I feel as if we could have talked about this for another hour, but I think we hit some really interesting points and a focus. And I want to thank our panelists, and Emily, thank you for guiding us through this process. And want to thank the audience for attending. We will be I'm going to hand this off to Emily to kind of a closing statement, and I'm sure there's going to be some other housekeeping items as far as when this video will be available for everyone. And for those of you that we didn't get to your questions, we'll ensure that we will follow up. So with that said, thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and be on the lookout as we will be having more of the series regarding other areas of interest in technology. AI, obviously, something that we're focusing on, and our clients are asking us to support and provide them with insight. So, Emily?
Yeah, I think Nelson, you closed us out perfectly. I just want to say thank you again to the panelists for today, and then especially thank you to everybody that joined us today. We appreciate your time, and if you guys have any more questions, you can reach out directly to anybody with their emails here, or we also have a nice QR code on the screen that you can get in touch with us there as well.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.